Welcome everybody to the FreeTruth Show. We are live. It's 9 o'clock on the south coast of England, and we have our very, very special guest, Mr. FRITZ Springmeier, author of Bloodlines of the Illuminati, and he'll be joining us for the next couple of hours or so, perhaps more, to discuss this book and the ongoing mind control of the planet via the Illuminati satanic bloodlines. It's my great pleasure and privilege and honor to welcome to the FreeTruth Show Mr. FRITZ Springmeier. Hello, sir.
Well, thank you, Patrick, and hi to all your listeners, too.
There'll be quite a few, and we've got just a quick reminder, if you are listening for the first time, please join the website and you can pop questions into the chat box for Mr. Springmeier. Throughout the evening, about the last half an hour or so, we'll be taking questions. And thanks to everybody on YouTube and Facebook, etc., who's taken a supreme interest in our guest this evening. Lots of questions from the comments on YouTube too. Where to start? Of course, perhaps the best person to ask would be Mr. Springmeier himself. For those that aren't familiar with some of the topics we may be going over tonight, it might be worth bearing that in mind. A lot of these topics may be new to people. One thing I will say before we begin is that everything Mr. Springmeier is discussing this evening is absolutely real. This is not entertainment. We are here, personally I am penniless, warning the planet that these demonic type beings, whoever they are manipulating on a mass level the consciousness of mankind, and they must be stopped, and hopefully we may learn a few tips of how to defeat the Illuminati. Mr. Springmeier, could you give us an overall summary of how you came to write this Bloodlines of the Illuminati, and a little bit of history of themselves and yourself, of course?
Okay. A history, a little bit of history of myself, a little bit of history of the Illuminati, and how the book came to be.
Sure. That's not much. That's not much.
Well, the Illuminati go back throughout the entire history of mankind. They have been seen in history by different names. Your ancient mystery religions were used by the people in power to control the populations, and the priesthoods of the mystery religions and the political figures of the countries like Egypt and Babylon were what we now know as the Illuminati. They were the controllers, the controlling elite, the rulers of countries like Babylon and Egypt were set up on a pedestal to be worshipped as gods by the people. Well, now we're more sophisticated, so we don't worship the Queen of England as God, but some of these Illuminati bloodlines come near to being godlike in their worship. People still worship Adolf Hitler. People still worship Genghis Khan. They're waiting for the return of Genghis Khan, the second return of him in Mongolia. And you have people that use the holy book of Adolf Hitler. So some of these people, even in modern times, have a god aura around them. But internally in their own rituals and their own thinking, they see themselves as divine illuminated creatures to rule the rest of the mass of us who they don't really view as on the same level as them. We're more like ants.
Yes, it's known, quite well known now, that they consider themselves to be a separate species almost.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see their disdain for us when you look at the way they created like World War I. And in World War I, they took millions of young men and they slaughtered them like lambs out there on the fields of France. in World War I, until the point that fortunately the young French soldiers woke up and they mutinied and said, "You're not going to slaughter us anymore. We're not going to go forward in these assaults. You know, we'll stay here in the trenches, but we're not going to allow you just to mindlessly order us to be slaughtered." But that's their view of us is we're cannon fodder. Did the Illuminati have something to do with that war? Yes, they created it, and Alfred Dodd, who was an international banker, and then he got involved with the Carol Reese Committee to investigate the un-American activities of foundations. He went in to the Carnegie Foundation of Peace, and making a long story short here, he got to go in due to some technical things that he managed to get in with his secretary into their big warehouse of records. And of course, they didn't think that he would do much while he was in there. But he discovered.
Would that be similar to something that Professor Carol Quigley had access to in the CFR record, something like that?
Yes. And when he got in there with the secretary with the dictaphone, he was only allowed in with a short time to look at these records. They actually discovered the memo from these Illuminati kingpins to Woodrow Wilson ordering him to make World War I last longer. Right. So not only did they create World War I and World War II, but if you go in and study these wars in detail with some understanding, you'll start seeing that they did things in World War II to prolong the war. For instance, if they had attacked Normandy in 1943, a good analysis of things is that they would pushed right on through France instead of the catastrophic battle that they had on Normandy a year later after Rommel had built up the defenses. Then they came out with this insane thing that we will not allow Germany to surrender. And then they prevented the German generals from being successful in overthrowing Hitler. Just constantly doing things to prolong the wars because we mean nothing to them. So that's a little overview of the Illuminati. We're dirt on their shoes, and they consider themselves divine. And these are the elite that are running us. These are the elite that cost us millions of dollars every year. Some of them are just downright parasites. Others of them are actually the decision makers and actually do produce something of value to society. But that's the Illuminati. They're the pillars of society. They're the people that everybody's looking up to. They're the ones that are making all the decisions, the important decisions that control everything in this systems of systems. And how did I come about getting involved in exposing them? Right. Why did I go where angels would fear to tread? Well, I kind of accidentally slid into the thing. I mean, accidentally, but not so accidentally. I felt called by God to do this many years before I actually did it, and it took quite a few years for me to come around to obeying the calling I felt from God. I didn't immediately start turning out books. It wasn't until about 1990 that I got on track with what I felt I was supposed to do. And that happened because I kind of slid into it. I was exposing the Watchtower Society, the Jehovah's Witnesses. Right. And I was praying that I would have the ability to destroy the Watchtower Society and their headquarters that was controlling all of these little Jehovah's Witnesses out there with their book bags in the street. And then I didn't realize what I was praying for, because then I got the information that I needed to destroy the Watchtower Society, because it was the information that showed how they linked in with these other organizations like the Mormons and other ones, how they were connected to the Illuminati.
Right.
But at that point, I realized that if I really wanted to do any good, all that the Watchtower Society was just one finger, one arm of this massive organization. It was just one front organization. That what I really needed to do was go after the heart of the beast. So in working with exposing the Watchtower Society, I ended up realizing I needed to step it up and expose the heart of the beast, which is the Illuminati. And just one thing led to another. I did a massive amount of research into the Illuminati, which then gave me opened a door for me to work with people that were trying to escape from the Illuminati. It's just like one thing led to another. So that's a little bit of history of myself. One thing about myself that's probably different from a lot of people is I didn't grow up watching television, and I've always been fascinated by reading and studying and history.
That's
and
right.
So from a very early age, while my peers here in the United States were watching television, I was busy reading Encyclopedia Britannica. So learning is a step-by-step process, and I came to where I was through reading literally thousands of books, studying history in depth, having you might even say the amount of reading I do that I'm addicted to books, but I just was fascinated to learn, and so all this learning didn't come about overnight. It was something that's a step-by-step process, and other people have come into my life and greatly helped me. My grandparents became local leaders in the American ag movement, trying to get justice and fair prices for the farmers during the Carter administration. And in the process of doing that, they had to try figuring out who was making all the decisions, who was controlling the market. And they discovered the Trilateral Commission, the Council of Foreign Relations. They started bumping into the front organizations of the Illuminati. So clear back during the Carter administration, I had my grandparents telling me all this stuff. So this has been an ongoing process for me.
Of course. Now you mentioned World War II there. For some years with books, I wasn't on the internet. I thought I knew everything about World War II, and once you get back onto the internet, you realise there's obviously a bigger picture, especially with the corporations being involved. In one of your talks, The Undetectable Gun Control, you speak about the British having infiltrated the German spy apparatus 100%. So the double agents were disinfo agents. They had to become double agents, or they wouldn't be employed as spies, if you like. So
right.
And you have the same system set up now, probably far more complicated, of disinfo agents on the internet, spreading lies and disinformation, deception.
So well said.
In forums and chat rooms, when people attempt to assemble some kind of organization or group to exchange ideas, it's often the trolls, as they're called, get in there and cause upset and divide and conquer, and everybody leaves the site, etc. It's still very ongoing today. But could you tell us a little bit more about MI6's involvement in setting up the American intelligence?
We're going to talk about MI6 in England? Wow, okay.
Absolutely.
Well, let's step on some toes here, I guess.
Well, we have no fear.
MI6,
do what we do.
MI6 has been very powerful, right along with MI5. Wow, where to begin? Well, first, let's put things in their proper perspective. There was a Brusa agreement after World War II, and I have the paperwork on the Brusa agreement in my files.
Right.
The British intelligence agencies, American intelligence agencies, Australian, Canadian, New Zealand, they are all just departments of the same organization.
Right.
Okay, so when we talk NSA, CIA, MI6, MI5, these are departments of the same organization, right?
Yeah.
Now, granted, that doesn't mean that they're not, like all good bureaucrats, protective of their turf, but they work together, you know. The CIA isn't supposed to work in America, so MI6 can. And MI6 isn't supposed to work in Britain, so the CIA can. So,
right.
You know, there is no limits to what these organizations can do. In World War II, going back to World War II, I believe from in-depth study, I think I can say this with unequivocally, the best intelligence agencies in the war were British intelligence. And I read where they were talking about their intelligence gathering abilities, that they were able to gather in every electronic Nazi communication that there was. Every time that the Nazis got on their radio and said something, it was being picked up. Well, imagine that incredible intelligence gathering capability, and after the war, they didn't want to get rid of it. Of course, they continued it. So this, being that they're addicted to information, and they have to get more and more information, more and more intelligence gathering every year. This addiction has taken them to incredible heights, so that the NSA and MI6 are scooping up such incredible amounts of information. It's mind-boggling. And of course, Britain, as you live there, so you know that everything's watched. Talk about intelligence gathering. There's your all-seeing eye there. They're watching everything.
Yeah, the whole country could be it's just, when you look on the map, on the globe or something, it's actually just an eye, where England's supposed to be. Might as well be. It's the most cameraed country on the planet. Now we have litter wardens, and they are desperate for information, because I think they want us to be predictable. You see, that's the most important thing to them, that they're able to predict our behaviour. And I'm led to believe that there's an actual program that runs in the Pentagon 24 hours a day called a virtual you. And everything you've ever done on the internet, everything you've ever said on your home phone or your mobile, or any pictures you've taken or shared with friends, I'm just going down the shop, I'll be back online in 10 minutes. They can predict with this information. Apparently they can predict what you're going to do next to within a 90% accuracy.
Thank you, Patrick. You just confirmed something I've been telling people for 20 years, and that is that they have artificial intelligence that knows exactly how each of us is going to act. I'm not talking about just a few people. There isn't a person on the planet that they haven't tried to diagram out or think through with this AI how they're going to respond in given situations, and it's pretty accurate. It's pretty accurate. They've got their this software is extremely good. It probably knows you better than you know yourself at predicting your behavior, and they can manipulate us that way. And an eyewitness to this software being used at the very highest levels, you know, he had his mind blown away, because he saw how with what's called the beast computer, they can literally go in and manipulate, micromanage some small event in our life. And I recently had some similar things. People around me, I'm sure, were manipulated. So what I'm talking about, I think I just recently experienced, where they knew how certain people would act, where their sensitive points were, and they just manipulated events so that boom, 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 they caused something to happen. And this is the level of control that they're going after.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a chemtrail activist in Canada. There's a chemtrail activist in Canada who claims to be under almost 24-hour attack with psychotronic weapons through mobile phones or computer, and he puts himself in the firing line and says, "Okay, I'm going to show people what's happening to me or how you're physically affecting me today, and I'm going to put it on the internet, and I'm not going to shut up or stop." So it's quite common. Apparently it's a virtual you is the program. So under the Freedom of Information Act, I would respectfully request that please send me my profile. I'm sure that would be very interesting. We talk... Well, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, when have we ever lived in a free society? Let's face it. I mean, we're talking about thousands of years of history here. And back in medieval times, freedom was an abstract concept. You know, you had your feudal lords and they wanted to chop your head off, that was it, and you were a naughty boy and you're obviously not a good slave, and it's quite a new concept, freedoms, you know. But the system, this kind of Soviet superstructure of a Soviet communistic system is being ratcheted up so much that it's almost a return to medieval kind of feudal overlordship.
Yeah, one improvement on it is that most people think that they're free. Most people think that they're electing their leaders. They have happier slaves. The serfs are happier, and they've given the serfs a little bit more to work with: better food, better entertainment, better work hours, but the control is still there, and the same families, the same elite are still controlling us as before. In fact, this American Revolution that the Americans are so proud of, they thought that they were getting away from royalty controlling them, and yet once you go in and start seeing who's been running America, you start finding out that the elite continued to run America. They just became slyer at how they did it. And that's why in my Bloodlines of the Illuminati, on the first and last page is the same genealogy chart showing how 25 American presidents are closely related. And a lot of our presidents go back to British and French royalty.
Sure.
So much for getting away from the control.
Exactly. You mentioned in your book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, that Great Britain is the mother country of Satanism, and that the Gaelic language is an important language for Satanism. Before we go on,
I think that's a little strong, though.
Sure.
I historically speaking, Britain hasn't been the only site. Originally, from what I can track, the headquarters was back in Balk, Central Asia, and then it moved from there to Pergamum, which when the Bible book was being written, you'll see in Revelations it calls Pergamum the seat of Satan, where Satan rules from. And then from there it moved towards Rome and towards Venice, and then from Venice the elite moved their center of power to Bruges, up in Belgium, and then it's been a process to get it to London. So it's not like
Yeah.
Satan's been ruling the world from London forever. But for some reason, London has been very a good place to set up the capital of all this. And I was asking why to people that were knowledgeable, and they were telling me that from London you can work the markets all around the world, and because of the time zones, and so there's some reasons why London's a very good strategic place to set up their capital. Eventually, I think, in the long run, if the world continues for a while, eventually I think that they will move it. I've heard Australia being a possible place in another 50 or 100 years, but that's way down the line.
It's looking like the Middle East from where I sit. Oh, can you hear me? Okay. Oh, yeah.
Middle East is not going to be a healthy place to live in if they get this third world war kicking off.
Exactly.
They've had a third world war planned for a long time, and it's to be centered in the Middle East.
Right.
And they've been working at building up all the hate and bitterness and all the other things involved to create a major war in the Middle East.
Exactly. I mean, I wanted to stick with World War II just for the time being. You mentioned
sure.
a large section of the German hierarchy would have been actual British agents themselves. Are we talking right up to Martin Bormann, who seemed to run the whole system next to Hitler? It was almost like Hitler's handler, Martin Bormann. Are we talking about Albert Speer? Or
Bormann was the evil genius behind Hitler. Bormann was the evil genius behind Hitler, and although it's only circumstantial evidence, I'm convinced that Bormann was Illuminati.
Yeah. And recently they found his skeleton in the ruins of Berlin there, so that's that story all wrapped up nice and tidy. I'm guessing if you were that high up in the Illuminati, there's a little boat waiting for you somewhere, eh?
Right. Yeah. Joseph Mengele left Nazi Germany in January 1945. He got out while the getting was good.
Yeah.
He came to America.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? The amount of propaganda, I mean, the amount of documentaries I've seen on Nazi hunters, and God, what a shame they didn't get Mengele. That would have been good, and really they've probably always been sunning themselves in a cafe in Barcelona or something, or Argentina. It's incredible that these monsters are allowed to just inhabit the world afterwards. But that's who they are. It's business as usual for the Illuminati, I guess. We're probably rewarded.
Yeah, exactly. True.
So we have the British...
But I wouldn't want to be in their shoes.
Sorry?
Pardon me?
Please
I said I wouldn't want to be in their shoes because Satan pays in counterfeit bills. Their castles that they have are built on sand, and in the long run, they're going to discover, if they haven't already discovered, that it's not all that it's cracked up to be, to sell your soul and build castles on sand.
We're going to talk about mind control quite a bit tonight, obviously, and when you see the mass hysteria in the Nuremberg rallies, kind of messianic, torch-lit, theatrical kind of setup, all kind of mass hypnosis, if you like. There was a chap that was working with Hitler before he rose to power, who was a hypnotist, helped him with his confidence at speeches, etc. But at some point, somebody must have had to choreograph those huge events with the knowledge that it was mass mind control. What's your thoughts on that?
Exactly. Isn't it amazing? And then we often look, like you're saying, at the Nazis, and and we think, wow, look at what they did, at Nuremberg. But look what we do every day with our rock and roll concerts. It's the same thing. They do the same thing. All the light shows and how and the theatrics and the costumes and everything else at these rock shows, and how people just get totally immersed and mesmerized by them. So we have the same phenomenon being done even today.
Exactly. I mean, a lot of the 60s... Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're coming in fine.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of the 60s and 70s bands eventually admitted that they were casting or attempting to cast spells at these concerts. And when you see how the girls used to scream at the Beatles, it's almost a temporary insanity,
Right. And then when you realize that groups like Tavistock Institution, which were involved in mind control, group mind control, and individual mind control research, are behind these rock and roll bands, then you realize, whoa, that the elite are that there's more to these concerts than what meets the eye. The modern music, the rock and roll music especially, but other forms of music, country music also, are being used to manipulate the Illuminati's total mind control. I wrote 3 books on the Illuminati total mind control, which is totally a whole nother subject than mass mind control. Everybody's familiar with the mass mind control just by watching a rock concert or Hitler at the Nuremberg rallies. But the Illuminati have been practicing internally on their own people a form of mind control that's easily 1,000,000 times more powerful than that, way beyond what anybody can conceive. And it's so all-inclusive and so controlling and so hidden that people just can't imagine what it's all about. And in order for people to grasp the subject, I wrote 3 books. I think you have obtained some of that information. The 2 big books that are available are the Formula book and the Deeper Insights book. And I would encourage anybody who really wants to know what's going on to get that information, because until you understand how they're able to create programmed multiples, these are people with multiple personalities, and they have front personalities that are very good, that have a good front, and they have deeper parts of their minds that are under this total mind control. Until one understands how this functions, really one's not going to have a very good grasp of what's going on around you. But once you've understood how this works, you're going to see it all around you, and it's going to make sense of a lot of things.
Absolutely. I would encourage
Patrick.
people to do that, for sure. Yes, I would encourage people to do that, absolutely. Just one more thing about World War II. In case anybody was in any doubt that the controllers of this planet instigated, lobbied and planned for these World War I, World War II conflicts, you can also look up the records of a one Prescott Bush, who was indicted and tried, I believe, for trading with the enemy. Would you have any more to add on that?
Yes.
The corporations, corporacy, if you like.
Well, yeah, yes, you had American corporations. The Bush family was behind Hitler's rise to power. you had American elite families that helped finance the Russian Revolution, that helped finance Hitler, and you might ask yourself, why would a capitalist finance the Russian Revolution? These are the kind of anomalies or red flags that should show people that the history that we've been given is not telling us the whole truth. And why would somebody, you have a number of prominent Illuminati family members, Astors, Rockefellers, and others, that whenever they would go to communist Russia, they would have the red carpet rolled out for them. I showed a picture of Stalin in the 20s when the Astors went over there, and he rolled out the red carpet. They had chauffeurs, big limousines. And you might say, well, why would the communists be hobnobbing, the communist leaders, with these capitalist leaders? Why could Rockefeller go over there and make business deals and everything, and on and on? In fact, the Rockefellers are still very active in Russia. So why? Well, it's because the common enemy of both systems was the common person. And communism is really actually Illuminism. The Illuminati created communism, and communism runs off of Illuminati ideals. So there's a lot to learn for people that are not initiated into all of this. That maybe that's a poor word to use. It sounds, to use the word initiated, but for someone who hasn't been involved in learning this, I know a lot of things I say are going to be kind of an affront to their intelligence, because it's going to contrast with what they've been taught as they grew up. Ralph Epperson wrote an excellent book that I would recommend, The Unseen Hand. And because I didn't want to duplicate what other people had done, a lot of the material that is in The Unseen Hand did not get into my books. Now, I don't know if I'm talking if I need to talk less and have more breaks, or if just talking away like this is okay, Patrick. So give me a heads up, because I haven't been on the show before, and usually most shows have advertisements and commercial breaks and whatnot.
Sure.
And so far we haven't had any.
Well, that's right, because we're not a commercial station. We're a poverty-stricken, desperate to save people's lives kind of station. So we don't have a lot of, we don't have any adverts actually. But at the top of the hour, we'll take a music break for those who want to make a cup of tea and other things. So there are no actual commercials. And before the interview began, most interviews I've heard from other people interrupt you, Mr. Springmeier, which is it's almost a crime, really, considering the amount of knowledge you've got. So my decision was to let you speak as much and in depth as you like, and have the floor in most cases,
And I love all of these subjects. World War II, I can talk at length on. Secret societies, I can talk at length on. You were mentioning something about aren't you related to the O'Connell family?
Yes.
And what was it? Was your family, as you knew it, people that were or played a role in the system?
Well, all I know is that a cousin of mine is putting together a book of our family history, and apparently we're related to William Henry O'Connell, who was in from an Irish family of 12 who they went to Boston, and he became a cardinal. My cousin, and apparently he ruled Boston with an iron fist and various scandals and things. His
Are you also related to? Are you also related to Dan O'Connell, who's the famous Irish patriot? Back,
I wouldn't know. Sorry, I wouldn't know about that. 1800s. But it's a fairly Catholic kind of common history, really, normal history. One was a priest, a clerk in the Vatican in Rome, Father Paddy. Another, his sister was a Mother Superior in Cambridge. But our family here, direct family, led a very kind of separate existence in England. So they don't know who I am, and I don't really want to know them, if you know what I mean. And because their modern descendants are the Kirk family, who are Democrats in America, etc. But I've seen pictures of them standing next to the guy from the World Bank, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'll get in touch. Yeah.
Well, one thing about the Illuminati is it crosses borders.
Absolutely.
And the Illuminati, people like to put a label on it, and I've been trying to get people to quit using labels. It's not a Jewish conspiracy. It's not a British conspiracy. It's not a Catholic conspiracy. It crosses all boundaries and all labels. So you're going to find some Irish in it. You're going to find some Scottish in it. You're going to find some Germans and some Chinese. This thing's quite international. The control's international. And then some families like the Rothschilds, which people consider to be a European phenomenon, the Rothschilds are totally all around the world. They're an international phenomenon. Not only their control, but a lot of these bloodlines have bifurcated and moved. The British monarchy. How many bastard children did the British monarchy have over the years, and where have those children gone to?
Well,
they keep track of these bastard.
Yeah, well, two of these, two of the girls who were mentally underdeveloped were shut away in a home, and they lived till about 50 years old. They were direct cousins of the Queen. So because of the inbreeding over generations, which I'm sure you're aware of, they throw up a few spanners now and again, and they have to hide them away, or worse. But William and his new wife, William and his new wife, 12th cousins. They're related to each other. And David Cameron, the Prime Minister here, is the fourth cousin twice removed of the Queen of England. So keep it in the family.
Exactly. I think the Europeans might be more aware of how all of the European aristocracy is really related. Americans don't seem to have much of a clue, but then Americans don't know much about anything except what's in America. But, you know, your king of Greece is not going to be a Greek. You know, your king of England is not going to be English. You know, and on, you know. You look at the Romanovs. The Romanovs weren't originally Russians. They came from Prussia. There was a Prussian branch of the Romanov family. And I was dealing with a Romanov descendant here in Portland who was participating in Illuminati rituals and was wanting help. This was years ago, was wanting help. And so that got me started researching who are the Romanovs, you know. Well, the name Romanov was a name that they gave themselves, which means New Rome, and it wasn't even their original name. And they were from Prussia.
Yeah.
So the point of all this is where's the loyalty of the elite? You know, they have
always been. It seems they've always been internationalists. I mean, going back to the time of John Dee, back in the first sort of openly Freemasonic or Rosicrucian court of Queen Elizabeth I. Apparently his code name was 007. He was a spy for the Queen. and he frequently channeled with other extra-dimensional beings or whatever to get a clue how to run the world.
Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head repeatedly there. The whole communist movement, starting off with, well, Karl Marx was one of the early ones who was a Freemason, and he was a closet Satanist. You had Bakunin, who was also a Freemason and a Satanist. And then, Lenin, who was an occultist. That wasn't actually his original name. Stalin, who was a Freemason. You've got an occult connection behind the leadership. You have Illuminati money coming in. When the Russian Revolution was getting started, you had people like Milner there in your homeland, and J.P. Morgan in mine, and Rockefeller. They're giving like $1 million each. It was very common to give like $1 million. Warburg gave 36 million U.S. dollars, and to fund this Russian Revolution, and so the whole program was planned and orchestrated by the Illuminati. One of the best places to get a good idea of how all of these revolutions tie together, there was a lady, Edith Starr Miller, and she wrote a book, Occult Theocracy. Actually, it was published posthumously after she died, but she goes in and shows the hidden hand behind a lot of these organizations, especially these communist organizations. And a large share of these communist fronts and communist organizations, these revolutionary groups like Mazzini's groups, they have not only occult connections, but connections back to quietly back to a lot of money and power. I've had people here tell me firsthand here about how in the United States, biker groups like Hell's Angels, actually the control for Hell's Angels here in America, it's controlled by rich British elite back in England. That's where the center of power for Hell's Angels is. It's pretty amazing.
Right, it is amazing. Yeah.
It's not what we think.
Indeed. Now, switching back to your earlier life, you spent some time as a child in Nepal, in the Himalaya. Coming back to the United States, I think you were 10 or 11 years old. Coming back from an environment where there's a lot of emphasis on the spiritual with the Buddhist monasteries around, it must have been quite a culture shock.
Yeah, it is. Well, I came back to America at a time that America was going through a real hard time due to the Vietnam War, due to civil rights movement, due to the hippie movement. The United States was in a state of upheaval. When I left the United States in the 50s, the United States was on the top of the world. They were optimistic. When I came back later, after having lived overseas, it was a totally different country. It was pessimistic. Kennedy had been killed. People were now suspicious of their government. They didn't trust their government. Their government was lying to them about the Vietnam War. They were having huge riots in the cities. The cities were war zones. They were burning down the centers of American cities, and the government was having a hard time keeping control. And it was a totally different country. it was sad. It's sad how a country that seemed to have so much positive and good going for it in the 50s and had so much self-respect, within a few years could be totally changed. But it's a good lesson. It's a good lesson for us to realize that, you might be living in this great empire of the USSR in the 80s, and in the 90s, that empire may be dissolved. You may be living in a day and age where the United States is a powerful empire, but what's it going to be like in 10 years? And Americans have a hard time picturing America being dethroned, but just like the British Empire, just like the Russian Empire, United States' time is coming too. It was a cultural shock. It was a cultural shock to see the changes. And then you were talking about the spirituality.
Right.
I wasn't a Christian at the time, so as far as that angle, I was seeing that more. I grew up in a scientific family. My dad's a scientist,
Right.
scientist/engineer. So at that point when I came back, I was looking at things from that angle. Now I have a different perspective on things, but I don't know if I could if there's any comments that I have as far as what I saw. I think, okay, there is one thing. I think that one thing you see when you come back to the United States is the crass materialism, that the Americans are just building their lives around crass materialism. And that can be kind of disturbing, because when you're over in Nepal, the Tibetan people, there are Tibetan people in Nepal, by the way. They're refugees from, some of them have lived there in Nepal for a long time, but the Nepalese too
Yes.
are, a lot of the Nepalese are like the Tibetans in that they're a very happy people. If you went out into the villages there in Nepal, you would see happy people. If you were amongst the Tibetan communities, you would see a people that were far happier than anything you experienced in the United States or the United Kingdom. But why are these people so happy? I mean, they're dirt poor. They're making their houses out of the material that's in their backyard. Why are they so happy,
Yeah, natural lithium.
Pardon me?
Something.
Well, for one thing, their lives aren't centered on crass materialism. The idea that whoever has the most toys is a success in life. Your toys are only going to bring you so much happiness, people. There's got to be a deeper inner spirituality there if you're really wanting to move forward. There was that aspect of things that I noticed in coming back is how spoiled Americans are, and how somebody in the outlying areas of Nepal, growing up simple, just enjoying life for what it is. And that's what I would want for everybody, is people just to enjoy life to the fullest. Get back to really the basics of having joy. We clutter our life up to the point that we lose track of the joys of life.
Well, the joys of life indeed would be family, the family unit, strong friendships, a strong community that looks out for each other like we used to. But
very well said.
Well, it seems to be the number one target of the elite is to break up the family unit, to use psychology, to use indoctrination in school, contraception, short skirts in the 60s, free love, because they knew that once people had a lot of different partners and were sleeping around a lot, that they couldn't bond for life and hence less likely to have children, etc. And we know that depopulation is a big part of it. But break the family unit, and then you're able to control the individual. They have no one to stand up for them, etc. So,
well said.
Well, that seems to be the modus operandi for ultimate control, you know.
Right, and that was one of the contrasts I saw between Nepal and America. In Nepal, they have arranged marriages, and Americans, they rail against that. If you just mentioned the subject of arranged marriages, the American, you have a good chance of the American becoming red in the face and angry. They've been programmed to think that that's a horrible thing. But I tell you what, the Nepalese families are happy. The arranged marriages work. They have almost zero divorce over there, and their family life is much better than in America. Are we still connected there, Patrick?
Yes, we are. Yep. I'm just having a bit of an echo, but we'll sort that out at the break. Later on in the break, later on after the break, we'll be going into some of the secret societies that make up this New World Order system, and perhaps some of the think tanks like the Club of Rome, and apparently the Dalai Lama is a member of the Club of Rome. So if you have a spiritual leader saying, let's do this the non-violent way, who happens to be a member of the Club of Rome, then you have to question even the Dalai Lama's loyalty, really. But we're going to head into the into the underbelly of the secret societies, if you like, the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, perhaps the roots of them, and how they're beginning to change tactics in a way and become more public. So we're just coming up to the top of the hour. You are listening to the FreeTruth Show on These Changing Times Radio. We'll be right back after this music break with author of Bloodlines of the Illuminati, Fritz Springmeier.